All right, so a beautiful day here in Moss Beach. It's usually really windy, but today's kind of calm, comfortable. It is overcast, but it looks like the sun might come out. All right, so I'm thinking of making something of this scene. There will be things I'm gonna change. Like, I don't like how this branch or this bit of foliage is in the center, so I might just eliminate that completely. Working on a 16 by 24 inch panel today. My usual palette of colors. The only guest color today is this transparent yellow oxide. Not sure if I'll use that. And I've got Liquid Original as my medium, odorless mineral spirits in a brush washer. And lately I've been using number 4 and number 8 natural bristle flats, and I'm assuming that's what I'll do most of this painting with. So I've toned in burnt sienna, and I'm going to sketch in burnt sienna as well. I like to have a little bit of that orange popping through in the final painting. So I'm going to have the land coming off at this angle, and then I like the idea of like some trees coming off here, and then there's another one that sort of comes off at an angle, sort of like that. So that's the main idea. You can see the horizon, which will be like out here. So those are the basic shapes, and then I can start building on this framework. So I'll be using these shapes here for inspiration. This tree here, and then the shoreline right there. But I'm not going to stick to this exactly. There's a lot of like parallel branches here. I'd like to kind of mess those up a little bit, and like I said, maybe eliminate this branch right here. So that's the original inspiration. I do like how this branch is kind of, or this trunk is coming off at an angle, so I'm going to exaggerate that. All right, so I've done the usual thing of working from the broad to the specific, and I started with, you know, just the simple lines, and then I came in and I sketched a little more detail, and I liked what I saw, so then I started adding more detail. I don't want to get too detailed, but I do want to make sure that I have, you know, the basic trunk arrangement in order here, so that I can work quickly from here on out. So it's really important to take the time early on to make sure your composition is working. If your composition is working, the painting should work out. But if my arrangements here are not pleasing or are not working at this stage, then I'm going to erase things, move things around until I feel like I've got something that's exciting to work on. The next thing is going to be just sort of defining the trunks using a dark mixture. As I mentioned, I'm modifying these to make for a good composition. So you may notice I kind of tilted this tree right here and had it coming more of an angle, which if I walk over, you know, in this direction, it is more of an angle, but I'm sort of exaggerating that. I do need to kind of figure out what I want going on with the foliage up top, but I'll figure that out when I'm sketching in the darks. So for my dark mixture, I'm using ultramarine blue and some burnt sienna, also a bit of titanium white. I want it to be a little bit lighter than my usual dark mixture, and I'm going to try to keep this transparent. Adding the titanium white will add a bit of opacity, but I think that it's going to be fine. And what I'm noticing is there's a bit of a dark outline around the tree. It's interesting, between some of the branches, there's almost like a, you know, instead of the trunk going straight, there's like a little bit of a concave like that. And I want to capture some of those unique characteristics of, you know, this cypress tree. The main portion of the tree is actually not that dark in value, but I do want, you know, to establish these sort of dark edges. And then I can come in and try to determine the correct value and color for the trunk. But right now I'm just going to kind of have fun establishing the structure and the drawing. And there's two trees here next to each other, which is sort of complicated, like this one right here. And I can pick and choose among the, among the branches that I kind of loosely sketched in. Some of these branches down here are completely dark because there's a bunch of white water in the background. I don't know if you can see right there. I mean, they probably all appear dark on the camera just because it's so strongly backlit. But from where I'm standing, I can see a lot of color in these tree trunks. All right, so I'm going to use a mid-tone value for the tree trunks, and they look kind of pinkish purple to me, so I've used a mixture of ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, a touch of dioxazine purple, and titanium white. All right, so I think I might want a little bit of purple in this mixture, a little more purple. This looks really gray to me, so I'm mixing in a little more dioxazine purple. One of the challenges is kind of keeping things sorted out here. There's two tree trunks next to each other, like right there, and then another one that comes off at an angle like this. There's a little branch coming out there. And I put in some foliage up top. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I might want to open it up a little more. This one's kind of awkward. Like just sitting right here almost at the edge. So I might change that. And then I might just, instead of having a lot of foliage up here, I might just have more, branches going off the top. So, I mean, this is a composition that I have not experimented with much, although I've wanted to. I love cypress trees, and, and I've seen a few paintings of cypress that I like, but for the most part, I don't know, they're very difficult to paint just because it's so complicated. But that's one of the things that I really like about them, how they create this really interesting silhouette. But in the past, to be honest, I've found it kind of intimidating. But, all right, that's kind of cool. I think that's working. This is definitely not working. I don't know, maybe if I just run off part of it off the top. Let's see if that's better. That's better. Yeah, actually, maybe even a little more. Get my little hook in the way here. So the key thing is, I mean, it's really all about, finding a pleasing and interesting shape, or shapes. So in a lot of ways, there's a lot of freedom with this sort of painting, but it's also very challenging, at least for me. But I feel like once the design is established, if I've got a solid design that I'm happy about, and that's predominantly based on a nice arrangement of branches and trunks. If I get that, to where I like it, then it's going to be really fun just adding bits, shifts of color and temperature within these trunks. But the key is, just getting the initial, the initial design, getting that right. At this point, like, I may be laboring over this more than I need to, but part of that is I'm just kind of feeling my way through this. I used to do that with wave paintings. I would spend a lot of time, just experimenting and observing, to the point where I developed a shorthand that allowed me to really block things in quickly and work quickly. But I don't have that established with this subject matter. So I just kind of take my time and enjoy, observing and trying to figure out what are the key characteristics of the tree that I want to communicate. And once I have that figured out, then in future paintings I can work, faster and more spontaneously. So, in a lot of ways, this painting is a study, but then again, they're kind of all studies in a way. I always try to discover something new every time if I can. All right, so I'm mixing up a color for the ground, and it's really similar in value to the tree trunks. I'm using ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and a bit of dioxazine purple and titanium white, but just a slightly different mixture. It's a little bit pushed more towards red, so I've mixed more burnt sienna into it. And you can't really even tell the difference. That's all right, I'll know where it is. I do need to lay in this value because having the land, the dark value in the land here, is going to be something that's important in, you know, establishing the composition. Again, I'm going to look for, you know, shifts in the color. But for now, the big shapes are what I'm interested in. I really want to get, you know, these silhouettes established. There's also a tree trunk right here that I added. I'm not sure if I'll keep it, but... And I'm using the number 4 brush at this point just because there's a lot of detail. And it's kind of fun to just pick around at these shapes. I feel like I want, I don't know, I want more like foliage up here. Sometimes I'll just, you know, randomly scrub in an area like where I want foliage and then walk back and see how it looks. Mixing up a little bit more of the dark mixture for the tree. At this point I walk back about 10 feet and just really paying attention to the composition, making sure that I like what I see. I am trying to make a decision regarding these rocks right here. I think that I might actually eliminate those. They're like similar value to the land in the foreground here, and trying to create separation could be a problem. So I had sketched in the rocks right here. I think I'm gonna eliminate those because if I add the rocks, it's gonna break up the design I have. There's something about this shape over here that I don't like so much. Maybe that all of the branches are going off like this. I need to break it up with some horizontals. Like whereas over here you've got, you know, some diagonals. These are all going in the same direction. Maybe if there's something up here that was kind of coming off like this. And even have it branch out a little. Like that. I mean, that's basically, that's kind of the idea. Maybe that needs to be a little higher. But already that changes the energy now. I don't know if you can see that. I mean, really, it is all about design. And it took me so long to learn that. And a lot of times, you know, the design issues that you're having or the design challenges, one of the problems is you don't know what's wrong. You have to just kind of continue to experiment. But I think it's really good to be, you know, to challenge yourself to not progress you know, with your painting until you have a block in that you're happy with. You know, in other words, where there's a pattern that you're happy with. Okay, this is, I mean, this is awkward over here, but I kind of like it anyway. I mean, that is kind of what's going on. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of parallel branches. But you can see up in like this area right here, it's just very random and kind of awkward. I did focus on that right here, captured that, and a few of these other branches, but eliminated some as well. So I think that looks pretty good. So I'm gonna start laying in some more color. All right, so mixing up a color for the ocean, and I'm using ultramarine titanium white, a bit of burnt sienna, and some cadmium yellow medium. I've got to be careful to make sure that the value of the water is dark enough that the white water stands out, but also light enough that the tree stands out. All right, so this is just slightly lighter than mid-tone. And it does get lighter in value as it goes off to the horizon because there's quite a bit of fog. But for now, I'll just kind of scrub in, you know, the whole area where the water is, and then I can adjust those values afterwards. And I do want sort of an interesting whitewater pattern down here. You know, even though this is just sort of an experiment or a study or whatever, you know, I decided to go with the 16 by 24 just because, you know, painting this on a smaller panel, like even a 12 by 16, it just would be it'd be too difficult to get a brush into these spaces here. In fact, honestly, this is kind of a struggle you know, even at this size. So it could be fun to come back and do a larger, maybe even like a 2-foot by 3-foot painting. Then there'd be a lot more room for some of these shapes. But as I mentioned before, the idea here is this is kind of a study just to really, you know, take a closer look at these trees and try to develop a shorthand. And then once I've got, you know, once I've got that down, then I can come back with a larger canvas. All right, so there's the block in, and the next step is going to be to reinforce some of the darks in the trees. The challenge is I want to get the trees as dark as I can so that there's a nice silhouette, but I don't want to eliminate all the color. So I want a balance of color, you know, and value. So in other words, not too dark. If you look through the camera, the contrast is really strong, but I can actually see a lot of warm reflected ground light into like on the tree trunks. So they're actually a warm gray, you know, from where I'm standing, that's what it looks like. And then as the trunks go up, it actually gets warmer and lighter. So that's the next step, is to look for the darkest darks, reinforce those, and then, you know, darken the tree trunks as much as possible that still maintain some color. All right, so there's what I finished up with. I'll try to move it so I don't get any glare. So yeah, so I got the initial sketch, you know, laid in the darks. And then once the scrubbing was completed, I just came in and started looking for variations in color and temperature in the tree trunks. But again, trying to make sure that the value relationships, you know, were maintained. You know, basically I wanted to make sure that this silhouette here stood out from the background, and yet still, you know, still wanted to get some color, you know, into those silhouettes, into those darker shapes. So there it is. I really do like the composition and I love the location, so I do plan to return and try painting this scene again. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you'd like to see some extra videos and help support the channel, there's a Patreon link down below. Other than that, stay creative, and I'll see you guys in the next video.